Hi, how can we use new media technologies to bring art closer to people? Today we have a special guest. She is an art expert and entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience. She served as the head of an art fund. She founded several companies in the art field like Icono, TV, and iStorm, and much more. We have the pleasure to welcome with us today Elizabeth Markevitch. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're so pleased to have you and discuss these questions. So, my very first question for you, I mean, you have such an extensive career. What inspired you in the first place to get to the art field?
Oh, that comes back, of course, to my childhood. I've been raised in a family of musicians and, of course, having friends artists at home all day long. So I was completely surrounded by this, I would say, this creative freedom people, which are people where most of the time think out of the box. And I don't think I could have done anything else than staying in the art environment or music. I could have done music or something else, but I think it was in my genes.
Okay, I looked at your career and there's so many experiences to talk about, and I actually want to start with one very innovative one. So in 1997, you co-founded iStorm, which was at the time one of the very first online galleries ever.
It was the first.
It was the first,
And it
right?
took years to have a second one.
Wow. Okay.
It was funny because at the time there was absolutely nothing of art. You couldn't find art on the net. And don't forget the net was really new also at the time. And we have difficulties to imagine that we had a life without internet. But at the time you were having just two websites. It was the Louvre, who just started, and the Hermitage. Both of them took at least 10 or 15 years to change that first website, to show you that, they were really, it took time to really put themselves in it. Hermitage was lucky because they had IBM behind them who did the technology, but then they were stuck in that technology and when all the things were involved and everything. And we came up with this idea, which was because the three friends that when we did that, we were all coming from the art market. And we were all tired of the art market as it was and as it's still, unfortunately. But that's another question, another discussion. And we wanted to find ways to bring art to people. And because we were coming from the market, we were still having this kind of mindset about, buying, selling. And the question was, how can we provide to people a high quality work which doesn't cost 3 millions, or even 3,000, that's something which is reasonable and that you can. So I came up with an idea, which was because I was coming from the music industry, I came up with this question that why can't we do art as popular than music? And that was the very beginning. Everything started by this question, and then thought, okay, let's copy and paste what the music industry did. And it worked out like this because the idea was to say, okay, the music industry was for the elite before the radio. And we forget about that. We forget that music at a certain time was only for the elite. And radio did open it up, and the industry took over, and it became a business for the artist also. And the artists have now different revenue, ways of having revenues. And so that was, of course, it is for them great. But in the art world, you still sell the original, and that's it. So what we wanted to do was to say, okay, we didn't want to do editions because we wanted to get out of the art market and do something parallel, which will not scare them because we didn't want them to think that we were going to be the big, bad boys. So we decided that we would do something if you want to make a parallelism to the record industry. And the record industry is an object, and the object is, $15 or whatever you're famous or not, and it's unlimited. But it's a high quality product. It's done by artists who know exactly what they've been recording. And when they're happy, then the industry takes over. will go do the packaging, the distribution, the marketing, and they have no clue if it will work out or not. But they are proud of their, what they're doing. And it's still like this. You have no clue. But we thought, okay, how come in the art industry, why can't we do the same?
Yeah.
So we came up with this idea that we would ask the artist to make us a digital kind of work of art. To give you an example, Damien Hirst was at the time he was doing his dot paintings. The dot paintings were already starting to be very expensive. So it means that you and me, we were already not able to buy one. So the idea of asking, Damien Hirst to do something for a kind of more masses, we came up with this thing. Okay, we would reproduce all the works on photography paper, so it's quality. It would not be an edition. It would be on demand. And then they would just give us the file, the digital file. We will show them the print. They would decide, how many dots in this case, the size and all of it. And when they were happy with color proofing and all this, then we could just put it online and sell it. At the very beginning, every single work of art was costing $200, whatever it was, whatever it was famous or not. So it was not $20 like a record, but still more expensive. But we were not producing, we were not, if we would have been producing mass, maybe it would have, we didn't want to have all these stock problems and things like this. So, and we've been very successful immediately. 6 months later, it was booming. And but there was a question. Why was it selling, even though we were only online, only in London and New York? And that took me years to answer to this question. And I took back the music industry as an example and realized that even if I'm quite famous as a musician, if I do not do, the proper marketing and whatever, I might sell to my fans, but it doesn't go. Okay, today you have Facebook and it can go bigger. Nevertheless, if you don't do all the social media you should, need, it can remain, very discreet, even if you're very famous. So you need to do this promotion and all this, which means that then you need to create a demand. And that's the core question, that if you want to sell, music, you need to create the demand. Look at today, you have, iTunes or Spotify or whatsoever. You're not downloading everything. You're downloading what you want. And this demand can be caused by many, many ways, but you still need that. And we were not creating a demand. So we were offering something which was nice to have, so to say, and offering it to people who knew already about art. So they were people like you and me who like art, who might like going to galleries and everything, can't afford what we see on the walls. But in this case, we're happy to buy something at $200 because then they can have it and they can say, I have a nice Damien Hirst or whatsoever. So this is how I thought, okay, what we need to do is create the radio. And this is how came the idea of Icono. Icono is in fact doing exactly what the radio does for music. It was the idea that how can I bring art to the people at home, exactly like how radio does, and to de-dramatize, if you want, the approach, and make you and I, feel good about it. So then it was the question of, course, if we do TV. When I started to have this idea, it was in 2006, like you said, it was the question, how do I do that? How do I want to do interviews like we're doing right now?
Yeah.
Do I want to do reportage, documentaries or whatever? And that was so much TV that I didn't think I could bring something new in that respect.
So like just to mention again,
Yeah.
so the Icono TV was the first, so it was in 2016 and it was the first TV broadcasting art before for 24/7. There was nothing like that before.
And there's still nothing.
There's still nothing
else. Does that mean I don't have competition, which is bizarre, but that's the way it is. Thanks for me, or whatever. So the idea was to say, okay, let's bring art to people, but how do we do it? I didn't want to do, as I said, documentaries, and I didn't want to use too many words also. And I even started to think that we shouldn't have any comments and that we should bring the pure visual experience.
Okay.
And that it's this moment to say, okay, let's touch the people who've maybe never been in a museum and don't go for museum for many bad reasons, at my opinion, but there are good reasons for them, and I understand them. You know, like you have people who said, "Oh, I've been in a museum when I was a teenage, and I felt completely oppressed by these paintings, and I found it too much on me," or the teacher thought we were stupid because we couldn't see this or that, you know, and all this, and it's all different reasons. Nevertheless, we even, you know, there's been reports in countries saying why, you know, TV channels, which are supposed, you know, the public TV channels, for example, have this obligation to show you art or culture in general in their program. They don't have the obligation to put it at a prime time. So if you're not interested in the arts, you will never see them because they put it in the middle of the night.
It's true. Yeah.
And even though you can have the catch up, you know, and see them, it means that you're looking for it. So it's still you going to the arts, exactly like you go to the museum and you're looking to the net, on the net, you know, to find something. You are doing this, you're taking this initiative to go and see it. So that was the thing, that how can I surprise people, make them feel comfortable and just say, wow, it's cool, or it's just beautiful. And beautiful is a word which is difficult to use nowadays in the art world, because a work should be interesting, not necessarily beautiful. And I claim to say that we have two brains. We have intellectual brain and the emotional brain. And so if a work of art is interesting, it means you need your intellectual brain, which is the case for contemporary art today, because we need explanations. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying they're using another part of the brain, and it has a different approach. In our case, we want to touch people emotionally first, because I think they should first be emotionally touched to then go to eventually the knowledge and to do these steps. So this is how we came up with the idea, taking another music, you know, example, which was MTV in the 80s. MTV, when they launched it, it was, you know, building up video clips together with the filmmaker and the artist, and together they were doing a work of art. And the work of art would be independent of them afterwards, didn't need them anymore, and MTV would build up a playlist. That was how it was in the 80s. And this is exactly what Icono became. We have art historians, curators, artists working with the film crew, and together they decide how are they going to film a work of art, which becomes at the end a visual story. So that's a long introduction, but to tell you that's how it came.
I really liked how actually you draw on analogies. So, and ask these questions and create actually a new system. Like 2 times it was like an innovative system. I really like that. Like talking about like new systems, I want to ask you a question drawing from your experience about new technology. So we hear a lot about AR, VR, mixed reality, and I want to know actually how do you see like the opportunities for these technologies in the art field?
They're huge. I just think that for the moment it's still too early. It's like, you know, with iStorm or Icono, we started far too early, really too early, because people have digital is still, at least for the art community. I'm not talking about the young people. I'm talking about the, you know, maybe more people of my age, or even when they're a bit younger, but people who have been starting maybe their career with analog. They have difficulties to see the usage, in fact, of digital, which is a shame. And when they use digital, they think they achieve it by just having a Facebook page, and that's not the case. You know, you're not digital because you use Facebook. They took ages to even digitalize their collections already, you know, and they do that, and they have no clue what they do it, you know. So they have it because they need to have it, which is of course important, but they can do so many things with it, you know, and there's so many creative things they could do with. That's a long, you know, talk we could have just on that topic. So the problem I see for the moment is that
Yeah.
it's still too early.
Okay.
And we don't necessarily always see good content, or it becomes gimmicks. You know, you use one of these things. It's fun when you use it, but you don't need to come back. You know, where when you show a good work of art, you want to see it over and over again. So that's where things, you know, have to shift. I would say that in terms of there are two good examples lately.
Yes.
In terms of AR, there is right now a new app, for example, which, as we are in Berlin, which is called the Berlin History app, which is an amazing new app done by really lovers of art, of the history in Berlin. And they came up with an app where you basically have the whole history of Berlin from the Middle Ages to today. And they, you know, you can geolocalize yourself, you know, in the city, and see how it was in the Middle Age or 1945 or today, you know, or during the fall of the wall or whatsoever. And you can have all these maps, layers like this, and you see how the city evolved, and of course extremely well documented and everything. And they're pushing now the AR, which means that now you, with your camera in your specific place, you will see how it was also during these specific times. When you do that, you use the technology for education in that respect, and it's fun to use. This, of course, you have to clap with your two hands. It's very well done, and it's done so it's respectful also. The second example, which has been just launched 2 days ago, which is the Stiftung Brandenburger Tor, which is in fact, they are sitting in where the house of Max Liebermann was, and they launched just a couple of days the VR experience, where now you're visiting the Max Liebermann house, his studio, and 3 rooms of his apartment, and this is stunning. This is really an amazing experience. This is until March, you can do this experience. And I really encourage you that, because you're really in the home. You see, you know, his furniture, you see where everything has been 3D modeled, and it's just great content. And so when you have good content and you use technology with great content, then the marriage is wonderful. The problem is that technology thinks, most of the time, technology can think that it's a standalone. It's not. It's a tool at the end of the day, but it has to be at the service of art and artists, I think.
That's a great way to answer this question. Almost like finished, but before that, I want you please to give an advice or any comment to the many startups who are following us and want to innovate in the art field. So what would you give them as an advice, having been an entrepreneur in this field?
It's I'm not sure it's an advice to do something in the art world, because it's tough, and the art world is very shy still in this. So giving an advice to a startup for art, I think they will suffer. Like you know, we did suffer in that respect. I don't know. I think they need to have, before going for if it's a mission for them, before going for the mission, to be sure that their future partners understand really where they're going. And I think there is a huge education to be done first for the art world, before starting anything, because then you knock your head against the wall.
So it's not about only technology or coming up with a solution.
No.
You need to understand what's going on in
Yes.
the field. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Cool. You need to understand how they think, because they think completely differently. What is their priority, of course? Maybe to have discussion, of course, to see if if they can't open up and see other, you know, opportunities, and that it can serve them, and that they see it as a service, and not as a competition, because it will never be. And they can be, you know, look at just a stupid example. How many museums do not open up their data, you know, where they just don't want there's maybe 10 museums in the world who are opening up their data, which is ridiculous. And because all these museums, when they do open their data, they double the numbers of people going to the museum. So what do they fear, you know? And they still have, the majority of them have this fear that digital is going to kill the, you know, the future visitors, that the visitors will not come. And we all know now that it's not true. So they need this, you know, to be reassured, which I understand. It's normal. But I think now there is enough examples to go for it.
So that's actually great lessons to finish. So we, like, it's not only about technology, it's also about like learning and knowing like the field. It's also about content, great content, and creating emotions through experiences. So thank you so much, Elizabeth, for all of these insights and learnings. It's a pleasure to have you. And we hope that you enjoyed this interview, and see you for the next episode.